So hello, and thank you for joining us. I have here with me now the wonderful and famous Dr. Karl Stonecipher, who has so much experience with IOLs and refractive surgery and implants, and he's such a careful and thoughtful surgeon and clinician, and I always learn so much from him. So we're gonna have a nice conversation today, but I'm Cathy McCabe. I practice on the west coast of Florida. I'm a cataract and refractive surgeon. And I'm here to talk with Karl about all the great things that he thinks about when he's thinking about IOLs.
Well, and I'm Karl Stonecipher. I have a cataract and refractive practice. I'm also academic. I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina in Tulane, so I get to deal with a lot of these topics and issues with residents. But I don't have an insane pool like you.
Oh, gosh.
But at the same time, I think that you and I have experience very similar. You know, mine older than yours, and you know, after 42,000 of these, experience means you've done it wrong at some point in time before, so you kind of build on that. So, you know, let's talk about old materials that maybe we used in the past, you know, that like, you know, the Acros lens was a great lens. It could go through a 2mm, but we all know it was a hydrophilic lens. The capsule had pacified quickly, so it kind of went by the wayside. And then we got some more of the acrylics, and we had used the silicones in our residencies. And, you know, I was still part of the PMMA. Were you ever part of the PMMA generation or no?
I'm just so much younger than you are, Karl.
Yes, I know.
No,
so,
not by much.
So,
but sure. We
Yeah.
did put some PMMA lenses in, especially when we were learning extra caps, which back in the day, we obviously had to learn that too. So, So PMMA lenses, actually, when you think about it though, they didn't have much posterior capsular opacification. They are really a rigid lens that stays in place. Some of the things that we think about as challenges now weren't necessarily challenges there, but of course it required a big incision size. So that was kind of its downfall.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the foldability was a big deal. So like we've got a new ICL, okay, and so the intraocular contact lens that Staar's produced is now a new design, and that's eliminating things like I don't have to do iridotomies anymore, and I can use the little hole, but the hole can produce a dysphotopsia as well. So when we're talking about lens designs, you know, what is that new lens design doing to improve the quality of the patient, and what is that lens design doing to help the surgeon get it into the eye, and what's the lens design doing to the patient postoperatively? So what is your lens design du jour? What do you like these days?
Yeah, so I've been using mostly hydrophobic acrylic lenses. I was a big Acros user. I think that is a beautiful lens. There are many hydrophilic acrylic lenses that have beautiful lens material and actually work really well on the eye, so I don't want to give that anyway a bad name. The Evo lens, I'm curious to hear your experience with it, because I think I haven't, my demographic is much older, and so I haven't had the same experience that you've had. But I was always very excited to have that available in the U.S., eliminating a step, as you said, with the PIs.
Right.
And so what you just mentioned a little bit that they have early dysphotopsia. How do you counsel?
So it's
those
just
patients?
a different halo. It was kind of interesting. I was giving a talk the other day, moderating a session, and happened to have one of the physicians said, well, you know, I've got an Evo in my eye. Let me tell you what it is. He says, this is what I see. It's a small, I thought it was bigger. He says, it's very thin ring, and yes, in certain things, if I'm looking at a white wall, maybe I'm going to see it with a white background, but I really don't see it like my patients describe a dysphotopsia, you know, of glare, halos, or starburst. So I think that what the lens design with this hole does for me is eliminate a huge problem, which is the iridotomy. So now patients are more prone to get bilateral ICLs. Will they come in? You know, my surgery center was a little bit challenging with that, but they finally said, no, okay, we'll let you do that. And then they're, you know, happy patients. They're minus, you know, 12s and 10s and 8s, and we've got this new huge range with it. So I think that's a big issue too.
Do you set up the patient somehow? Do you say, you know, how is it that you tell them what they're going to experience? I mean, you mentioned what the physician sees, but do you have some wording that you tell the patient early on you're going to see this way?
I do exactly the same thing you do, because great minds think alike. I use a lot of animation. And I use a lot of pictures. And so everything's on the web. So I've pulled that down, and I have them in little buckets, and my staff knows, does a patient ever sit and wait in your waiting room or in your
patient
lane?
ever not sit and wait? Is that what you're asking?
So I look at every office, every staff, and I said, if somebody's waiting on me, I want you clicking videos, and I want you talking to them.
Educating them.
Yeah,
It's an opportunity.
Yeah,
right?
and we've got the checked up, so we use that.
Nice.
But now my partner hates all that stuff. So he unplugs it from the wall, and he doesn't want that on and all that sort of stuff. So it's really kind of a unique thing. But I'm going to show you what a glare and a halo and a starburst look like. And I'm going to say, you know, I've had LASIK, so I've got a little bit of it too. I'm going to tell an EVO patient, this is what you may see afterwards. But, you know, I think it's not anything that's going to be a problem. And then I tell them I haven't taken many lenses out because I work diligently on making sure the lens design, the lens type is the right type for them.
So I know you have a big refractive practice, and so EVO fits in really well with that. And you have a lot of LASIK patients. We were talking before, and you were telling me how many of those patients are coming back now for their cataract surgery, or maybe even refractive lens exchange as they become presbyopic. So what is your go-to lens for those patients that have had laser vision correction? And is it different for post-hyperopic versus post-myopic? And how do you make those decisions?
So I think in terms of, let's go first. In 1991, I had my little Arvo poster, and I was standing next to it, and Yanni Plikros had walked up to me. And we just happened to start back in the old days, you know, you talked, and you just kind of went through while you're standing there. And I said, what do you do for hyperopia? Because I don't want to do hyperopic ALK, and I'm not going to do hexagonal keratotomy. He said, just take their lens out. I was like, God, that's brilliant. And so, and luckily, the people I run with have been maybe aggressive, some people say, but I think it's more pioneer, not buccaneer. And I think that, you know, I've done refractive lensectomies.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
And I think I have done for 30 years now, refractive lensectomies or more. And I think that even those patients with monofocal lenses that may have been 3-piece silicone haptics, you know, whatever, they're still ecstatic. I mean, I see them every now and then come back in, and some of them will say, is there anything that I should do, or can we do something? And I'll try monovision, maybe in a contact lens. So we've got to go back what we've done before, and then what I tell everybody with every lens design, why would you wait? Okay, so if you've got an early cataract, you're a LASIK patient, why'd you wait? I said, every 6 months I get a new lens. Now, at some point in time, I said, I can have LASIK now, and I'm happy with the technology, but at that juncture, I knew that it's going to keep getting better because the galvo mirrors are going to run faster, the lens designs are going to be better, however you want to put that in refractive or cataract terms. But I think that with these newer lens designs, yes, so like for a hyperopic LASIK, I love the Rayner EMV and that positive spherical aberration because it helps me with Q values. So it takes that negative Q value, flips it back to more normal in terms of what their spherical aberration and what they see in the eye of their telescope. And then I think in terms of, for you, you know, if you're a myopic LASIK like me, you know, that lens is probably going to push me over the edge because I was really nearsighted. And so that's going to push my Q value more problematic. It's not going to make it better. And so I've got to watch out for those. And I do a lot of Vivi lenses in those patients. But the refractive lensectomy is an interesting person. And so they're typically young. They want all three ranges. They usually have healthy eyes. I ask about family. Do you have age-related macular degeneration? You have some other things. But they're getting more trifocals because they want all three distances, especially the really, really nearsighted people.
How about post-RK? Do you have a lens of choice?
Yeah, so I would tell you, years ago, I didn't think we really had a good lens because of the fluctuation in vision. So I had a lot of surgeons in my arena in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, that took RK to the max. Hexagonal RK, 2.75 millimeter optical zones, all that sort of stuff. I was part of the Apthera IC8 clinical trials, and we had to do one eye monofocal toric or monofocal and one eye with the Apthera lens. That's on label, on design, I have to say that. But now, in January of 2023, it's now January 2024, in January of 2023, I told you, I'm going to do your worst eye. I'm just going to do your worst eye, and then we'll figure out what are the lenses you put in. All but one person has asked for that lens in both eyes with a messed up cornea. So I'm saying if they have a significant hyaloid aberration, that small aperture lens design really makes a big difference, especially with what? The fluctuation.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, but do you have any tools that help you, number one, with the Q value, because we talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
Number two, to know if any of your complex corneal patients, post-RK, whatever, will benefit from a small aperture IOL, and what is that? And then are there other choices, and what did you use? So say somebody is just not comfortable putting an Apthera in, or how does light adjustable lens fit in there?
Oh, I think that's great.
What would be, what would be your kind of monofocal of choice for those RK patients? So
yeah,
sorry, that was a
no,
big
that's fine.
question.
That's not a big question at all. It's real simple in terms of how you got to think about it. So I got to think of what's going to happen to this patient with time. So they're going to get more hyperopic, right? So for me, a small aperture is going to be different. But a light adjustable lens, if you have a persnickety, as I use that term, patient, I'm going to adjust it, and then they're going to fade with time. Now we got to lock it in, and we're going to have, at some point in time, we got to look at that patient and say, okay, this is where you're going to be. And are we going to leave them a little minus to adjust for that? But that fluctuation in power from morning to evening with those, I don't know, 8 plus, 16 plus incision RKs. I've had 182 incisions. Yes,
Wow.
82.
How do you get that many pieces?
They
in
crossed-fitted them. They did everything. But I think that's a great lens for that. The light adjustability, I think, is phenomenal. I think that they're two different birds. So I think if you have a 4-incision, 6-incision RK, and you're putting that light adjustable lens in, that's perfect. They don't usually have fluctuations. Yeah, they may have a little hyperopic drift or something, but it's pretty minimal. I think the Apthera IC8, and I'm not trying to dovetail it into one position, but boy, it works really well for those guys. So then you have to make a choice. Do you want to cross-link that patient who's fluctuating, and some of them have been cross-linked, or you just want to go ahead and put this lens in and see how they do in reserve cross-linking for later, possibly?
So sometimes for those patients, we have an eye trace, and we'll use that to look at the smaller aperture settings to see how that's going to affect higher order aberrations. For me, that having that flexibility of refractive kind of forgiveness that Apthera has throughout those fluctuations of the day, I think is a benefit, or as they drift.
Right.
But it's harder for patients to understand that. So I think one of the nice things is showing them the effect on the E
Correct.
that smaller apertures have as an educational tool too. So I like it for that.
So I have an eye trace. I have an older eye trace, so I don't want to denigrate the technology in any way, shape, or form. Some of the newer, like dysfunctional lens indexes and stuff like that, I don't have access to. I've been using an OPD3 for those. I like Damien Gatnell's software. So Damien Gatnell has visual simulation. So you can put in a daytime, a nighttime, you can put in an E-chart, you can look at the area under the curve, but I really think the simplest thing is showing them the dot. So I say, hey, that's what the North Star looks like, but when you take away everything, this is what you still got, and that's related to your cornea. And that's what's still on your cornea. So we've got to talk about, do you really want to put a trifocal lens in, Panoptic, Synergy, whatever your favorite flavor is, in a patient that still has higher order aberrations, say 0.45 or higher. I always try and put a number to that. So I like Damien Gatnell's software. It's on the OPD3, but I love what they're doing at Tracy too. I have to upgrade, and it's like you're always dovetailing your equipment.
But you get your Q value from your OPD. Then,
yes, as
and
well.
that's how you're making that decision when you
and
look
higher
at that.
aberrations too.
Yeah. So I think we're saying the same thing with different technology, that those tools are really helpful. A picture's worth 1,000 words, as we even started the session talking about, and I think that really is helpful.
But one of the new tools in the eye trace people don't talk a lot about is this new dry eye look. And so you can literally put a drop in and show how much fluid their tear film has changed just from putting a drop in and letting that tear film look better, act better, refract better, whatever you want to say.
Again,
So
I think it's a compliance thing. It helps with that as
but
well.
I think Tracy has a top end on that one.
Yeah, we've been very happy with that.
Yeah.
So let's look really quickly in the future. Like if you could
sure.
design your ideal lens. I know there's a lot of different things, modular, accommodative lenses coming up. But in our last few minutes, what would be all the characteristics and attributes you would like to see in a lens in the future?
So I love modular. I think modular is going to be good. I think we're going to be able to take it out and put it in. And I think that's the next phase. Okay. But we work with a company which can supply energy. So one of the problems with some of these cyber eye or some of these lenses that can change pixelated optics and do stuff is what? It doesn't have the power. So now with this thing that goes on your eyelid and blinks, I think you're going to be able to power a lens. I think you're going to bring it up to snuff with maybe wearing a pillow at night that powers it up. And I think that is with the accommodative triad, you're going to look in and it's going to change its power. We have glasses that do that already. I just think the intraocular lens design isn't, and I really think the sky's the limit. So I think you and I are going to be walking in New York City, and we're going to say, Siri, tell me the best place to eat. And it's going to pop up in my vision, just like it does in my rental car.
Yep.
It tells me how fast I'm going and where I'm
It's
turning.
going to tell you how
on
long the
Google.
wait is.
And it's going to tell you, you know, I've got a 5 o'clock appointment, or I'm like, oh, well, let's go to the play instead. Tell me about what's open.
It's going to say, Karl, you told your wife you were going to pick up groceries.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's some really cool things coming.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit before the bionic, we might have a true accommodative lens.
I
or
hope.
an infinitely adjustable lens. Those
I
are
hope.
kind of my
Yeah.
wishes.
Yep.
Well, it was really fun talking to you about lenses. There's so much more we could say.
Yeah.
But until next time.
Thanks for having me.